Hello, and welcome to Unexplored Games, a channel dedicated to lesser known and unique board games. Today we're talking about Ambush, a 1983 game from Victory Games. It's a paragraph-driven World War II combat plus movement board game. I really like it. I think it's unique. I think the mechanics, both movement and combat, are unique and fun. It's solo, which is kind of a bonus for me. I like it. I think it's cool. I'm going to go over kind of an overview, and then I'm going to do an example of movement and how the nifty little paragraph book works, as well as this cartridge view sleeve, as they call it, and then I'll do an example of combat. I'm going to do my best to keep things spoiler-free. Because this paragraph book only has 1,000 entries, and it's kind of spoilery if you know what's going to happen. And that kind of plays into the replayability of the game, which I'll address at the end as well. So, as I said, Ambush is a paragraph-driven solo World War II war game. It has 8 missions, all listed in the back of the rulebook. And each mission is unique because there are various rules or restrictions that the missions contain, as well as different objectives and different ways you get victory points. I'll try to show some of that. I'll zoom in on it here, and you can see how, for instance, this one, your squad can only use certain weapons, and when you enter the game, instead of entering on, let's say, a map edge here, you would enter by parachute and landing, which is kind of cool, and reading paragraphs. Pretty unique, pretty fun, I think. Really cool game. So I want to go just show kind of an overview of how this works. Here I've set up like a mock mission. This isn't something that you'll actually play. This is map A, but I don't think I was ever in these positions because the goal is to do something else. And I'll try my best, like I said, to prevent spoilers. But let's get to the paragraph reading. It's really cool. This is out of combat movement. In combat movement, it's a little bit different. When you're out of combat, you can move your soldiers kind of willy-nilly as groups. When you're in combat, each soldier is going to move individually and has specific rules for that, which I'll go over when we get to the combat. So, movement out of combat. When you move out of combat, you're going to move from one hex to the other, like I said, as a group or individually. So, for instance, if I wanted to move B here alone, I could, or I can move this whole group over. Whenever you enter a hex, you will check this hex number against something that the game calls the mission cartridge view sleeve. Each mission has multiple cards that go into this sleeve, and every letter and number combination is represented here. And you slide the card back and forth. Let's see if I can get a good view of this. Slide the card back and forth, and the numbers and letters move back and forth to correspond. So back to this example, we are moving from this hex here into J14, and let's see what the sleeve has to tell us for J14. So we line up J and 14 here, and it might tell us a paragraph number. Look at that, that one says none. But for the sake of argument, let's say we actually were doing into G11 there. That tells us which paragraph in the paragraph book to read. Again, I'm going to try to do no spoilers. I'm going to see what 191 says, and if that's something, yeah, that's a great one. So 191 here, this is a good example. I'll try to black out everything else here, but 191 says roll 1 die and do some activation checks. Activation checks are how Germans show up in this game. So if we were actually to read 191 and do what it says, we'd check to see if Germans ambushed us, which is kind of fun. For this example, I'm going to actually do a couple Germans in here, not 191's results, but just kind of a mock battle. But first, I want to talk about the other possible result. Results from the paragraph book can range from a combat like you saw to things like an American soldier showing up to support your efforts, or more Germans showing up, or a tank, or a car. I had one time a plane crashed. There's sometimes artillery fire that can hit a specific hex that you roll 2 dice to determine which hex it hits. And then anyone in that hex blows up, or it turns from a forest hex, which is kind of gives you cover during combat, to a crater, so you no longer have that cover there. I've even seen a result of it was only the wind. So you go through these checks, you roll against, my soldier A is rolling, he sees something, but then I roll again and says, well, it was just the wind. And I'm not sure if that actually was the wind or if I just misrolled and didn't roll the right result to see that a German showed up 3 or 4 hexes away that I have to deal with here in a minute, or that I know to go around that spot because there's a German there. So there's a lot of really tenseness that this movement plus paragraph lookup combo gives you, especially because a lot of times, if you notice on these paragraph sheets or these card sheets, a lot of times they're just none all over the place, but you never know if maybe the Q, whatever this corresponds to, is none, but somewhere else on Q you have another result. Or did you switch from condition 1 in this game to condition 2, which has different events now? It's really fun and a good way to add tenseness to the game and adds variety. But like I said, we're gonna move to combat now. So give me a second, let me set this up and I'll come back and we can talk about combat. I did a little bit of setup off camera, mocked these Germans out. Again, this is not spoilers, this is just made up. I drew some Germans, I drew their cards, which are tell you a bit about that specific German and what actions they take, as well as their stats and how many victory points you get when they enter, etc. And I did a little bit of the combat setup. I didn't want to go over the dice rolling, how this is all set up. It's kind of boring, so I did it off camera. Just know that these positions are all determined by a combination of dice rolls as well as their initiative scores. Initiative for Germans is here. And on our character sheets, every character sheet has initiative here as well as their perception. Perception determines whether the Americans are active at the moment the Germans enter, whether they see the Germans or not. Again, I'm not going to go over that. You can read the rules to determine that part, but I do want to talk a little bit in depth about the action, the parts of the game that you're actually doing things, and the parts of the game that make it exciting and fun, something that would help you understand whether or not this game is for you. So whenever Germans enter, you do your initiative rolls. Usually it's 2d10s, and you get positions on this round track. There's 2 big things to note here. Each row has a color corresponding to it, and then it's either in the 2-turn section, the 1-turn section, or the panic section. When you end up in the panic section, which is this result here, that soldier has no actions this turn, and at the end of the turn he lays on the ground, falls down, and is scared. The way that you choose when each individual goes is when you do your initiative roll. When you roll those 2 dice and assign, let's say this is the Germans and this is the Americans. The higher number, in this case that would be 9. 9 is the highest in this game. That one determines whether they have advantage, which is represented by the yellow, or disadvantage, which is represented by the gray. That determines within each turn, there's 2 turns, this is the first turn, this is the second turn, within each turn who goes first. When I did the roll, the result for the Americans was 1, the result for the 2, and the result for the Germans was 1. So the Americans have the advantage and are able to go first. So we start with the first turn, which is this 2-turn track. Whenever a soldier does a turn, their initiative marker goes down to 1 turn, and then they have another turn next go around. And then once they do that turn, this goes down to complete, and they're done with their turns for that action round. So we're going to start off with the Americans. Americans have A, B, and C all ready to go. Those correspond to A is here, B is here, and I believe C is right under B. So I choose, it's kind of nice you get to choose which one you go first. The Germans have to go in alphabetical order in each row, but the Americans can choose which one to go first. So I know that AC, that's my A character here. He is pretty good. He has an SMG. He has a weapon skill of +2. So I'm going to have him try to shoot through this open door and hit that Q there. The rules for line of sight, I might be getting these wrong here. The rules for line of sight when it goes into a building are a little wonky. You do trace lines of sight from the center to the center, and then it determines, the hex side is what determines whether you can see. So I'm in this K12, Q's in K13, and the door does open across this hex side, so I am able to see that soldier. Combat and ambush is dice rolling and table lookups, just like a lot of war games. It's fairly straightforward. The first thing you do is you need to make sure that line of sight matches. We can definitely see I'm standing up, I'm shooting into here. The next thing you do is you look over at whatever soldier is doing the shooting, which is AC here, and they have an SMG. The SMG is a pretty decent gun. You can see here the submachine gun. There it is, and here's all the information here. The first thing you need to do is check to see if the weapon jams. You do that by rolling 2 dice, assigning one as the percent or the tens and one as the ones. We're doing a percentage roll. I'm going to assign this green as the tens and the blue as the ones. So green is tens, and I get a 4, so it's 40. And then my next, my next roll is a 5, 45. 45 is definitely less than 5, or sorry, greater than 5. So I do not jam. Woohoo! My weapon doesn't jam. I still get to shoot. The next thing you do is determine the base hit chance, and it starts off with a range calculation. If you look over here, I am exactly 1 hex away. It's in the adjacent hex. So in the weapon type chart, we look at submachine gun in an adjacent hex, which is 6. If it was further away, we would look at the ranges. This is range 2 to 4 on the submachine gun, would be short range, and start with 5. But we're adjacent, so we're starting with a 6. 6 or lower starting out. That is our base hit chance. The next thing we need to check is any other conditions that might be applicable, such as is the enemy in a stream or undercover, or in this case, in a building. Luckily, and he's crouching too, so that's also going to make this a little bit harder to hit. Next thing we do is we go to the combat modifier. So we started with a 6 as our base hit chance. Next, our enemy is in an interior. It is through an aperture, but it is adjacent to the firer right here. So interior, through aperture, adjacent to firer. Soldier is crouching, so it's -2. So before I had 6 or lower to hit, now I have 4 or lower for a hit. So we just roll. We roll 1 die. We see, okay, we got an 8. We add our, sorry, this was also added to our base hit chance. So we had 4, -2 for them crouching in an aperture, +2 for the weapon skill, so we're back to 6. We got an 8. We don't hit him, which is unfortunate. We do not hit that enemy. But the next thing we do have to do is check to see if we've run out of ammo during that shot. It's another percentage roll. We're doing blue for 10s and green for 1s, so that's an 81%. And luckily that is higher than our SMG's, what is it? It's 50% out of ammo chance. So 81 is higher than 50, we're good. So we do not hit Q. Q lives another day. As I said earlier, once you do an action, you move your, oh, this goes over here. You move your marker down to the 1 turn track. Now A can't do anything else until these B and C go. So let's do C. Hopefully we'll, through a window. Let's roll for damage just so I can show you how that works. So we're gonna imagine that A actually hit that soldier. So A hit that soldier. So again, SMG is the weapon that we chose. The submachine gun, we're going to come over here to the wound, the damage table. One of these numbers corresponds to panic, wound, incapacitated, or killed. Roll a d10. We got a 1. 1 means that Q, let's go SMG, 0 to 1, just gets panicked. Panic is good for, it's not great. They get panicked, they immediately fall prone, and they lose their turn. That's the only really good outcome for panic. is that they no longer can do anything. Unfortunately, they were going to panic anyway, so maybe I should have chosen a different soldier to shoot at. That's the US soldiers process. So let's imagine all the US soldiers did their thing. They all missed. They're all not good shots for whatever reason. Every soldier did their work. Now it is the Germans' turn. The Germans, as I said earlier, if you have more than one German in a row, it is alphabetical. So it goes N, then, or sorry, L, then N, L, M, N, yeah. L first and then N. The process for the Germans is a little bit different. What you do for Germans is at the beginning of the action rounds, I had rolled a die, and that's going to count for all of our Germans' actions this turn. So we have a German action number this turn is 4, and that's going to be the die that was rolled for each of these. We're going to imagine we're in condition 1 still, and our die roll is 4. So we look up paragraph 840. The German paragraphs are usually things like stand, and then fire, and then crouch. But in some missions, they have mission-specific actions they can take, such as drive the car off the map, or what have you. This one is, I'm really glad I saw 840 because, as you can see here, 840 says do nothing, which is kind of interesting. Do nothing. If we had 839, you can see how it says if there's an active US soldier in the hex, assault. If nobody they're in the hex, they're going to crouch and conduct best fire. So things vary. It's kind of fun to see, depending on the die roll, what happens to your soldiers and what happens, what the Germans do. It adds a variety, and it really does add to the replayability. That's a good place to stop with the combat and talk about replayability. This game seems at first blush that it's not really replayable. You have only so many paragraphs you can read. You only have so many hexes that you can move into. But honestly, the number of variations, the amount of cards you get here, and each condition card, like I showed earlier, has different events that correspond to each hex. And sometimes a random event can tell you, at this point, go ahead and change from condition 2 to condition 3. And then the next hex, the next paragraph you read says, oh, no, don't do condition 3 anymore, do condition 4. There are a couple of missions that I've done that I did not see some of these condition cards at all. Or, like I said, I read one paragraph from that condition card, which is kind of cool. That means next time I play it, I'll probably take a different strategy. I'll probably go a different way. I'll not see the same paragraph readings over and over. Plus, I don't know if you're like this, but there's eight missions, and I'm going to run through the whole campaign. You can do them as individual missions, or you can do them as a campaign. I'm going to run through the whole campaign, and then likely not play it again for a little while, maybe a year, maybe shorter, maybe longer, but I'm not going to remember. I'm not going to remember that during mission 1, only on condition 2, when somebody goes into M14 and you roll a 6 or higher, that Germans come out over here. There's no way I'm going to remember that. That's just too much specific knowledge, too many numbers that are going to get jumbled up in your head. Like just now, I read 840 on this, or was it 804 for the German card? I don't remember. I think there's a decent amount of replayability. I think this game is neat. I think the paragraphs make it unique. I think the rolling of the dice to add the randomness to it makes it pretty cool. I was doing a mission and I was moving around the map and suddenly all these Germans showed up, and during combat, if you move, you have to read another paragraph every time you move, but you can only move a soldier at a time. And then more Germans showed up every time I moved. I tried to maneuver. I tried to get my incapacitated soldiers off the map to save their lives, but then more Germans showed up. And this happened over and over and over. And this particular mission didn't tell you up front what the victory conditions were. So that made it even more interesting because I didn't know what my goal was. I was just trying to survive. And then finally, one of the last random dice rolls I read, when I knew that because I had run out of German counters, that I had no more Germans showing up, I knew that this next random encounter must be the mission-ending condition. And suddenly somebody showed up, and I don't want to spoil things, but they told me how to end the mission, and then said, like, abandon your post. Like, what? I should have abandoned my post earlier. And if I would have played that game a little bit differently, if I would have rolled the dice a little differently and got that result earlier, instead of fighting for my life and not knowing what was going on, I'd be fighting for my life and trying to satisfy that victory condition while Germans were around. So it made a cool variety. I knew that when I was at the end, I knew how to finish it. I knew it was going to be easy because there were no more Germans coming out. But I couldn't imagine playing that same exact scenario with that goal, knowing that Germans could pop out the last second somewhere. It's pretty cool that it gives that cinematic. It even says on here somewhere in the rules or on the box, it says like Hollywood style, and it definitely does feel like a movie sometimes. It feels like you're pulling your buddy, and then a German pops out of this door over here, and you have to deal with it, and yelling over here to that guy to do something, and maybe giving him your turn because commanders are able to do that. It adds to this like tenseness and this action, this excitement that makes me really like this game. I do think that I played a lot of it night after night after night after night. I'd play like half a game and then finish it up and start the other game. So I probably played a week and a half in a row. And that got a little repetitive. So like there's a little bit of repetition, but after setting this up, I haven't played in a few days. After setting this up, like I want to play my next mission. I want to see what happens. I want to see where these soldiers go. I want to see if my soldier, Dusty Dornan, as I named him, is he going to survive? Because he, I have to roll to see if he survives. I think I didn't do that last time. Is he going to survive, or am I going to have to find out who the new soldier who joins my company is? It's exciting. It's fun. And it's great. It makes the solo experience awesome. I heartily recommend it. I think it's a fun solo war game. I haven't decided what I'm going to do for this channel yet. I might do a full rules run through because I don't think one of those exists. So keep an eye out for that if that interests you. But for now, thanks for watching.